So today what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and talk about Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is dealing with activity-based costing, or ABC, which is a tool that has been embraced by a wide variety of service, manufacturing, and nonprofit organizations. Okay, so first, a definition. So ABC is a costing method that is designed to provide managers with cost information for strategic and other decisions that potentially affect capacity and therefore fixed as well as variable costs. It is ordinarily used as a supplement to, rather than a replacement for, the company's usual costing system. So ABC differs from a traditional costing system in three different ways. The first one is that non-manufacturing as well as manufacturing costs may be assigned to products, but only on a cause and effect basis. For example, ABC systems can assign sales commissions, shipping costs, and warranty repair costs to specific products. Some manufacturing costs may be excluded from product costs. This is because ABC only assigns a cost to a product if decisions concerning that product will cause changes in the cost. ABC excludes two types of costs from product cost: organization sustaining costs, which will be formally defined later, and the unused capacity costs, also called idle capacity cost. Now, ABC systems that are used to support internal decision-making do not need to conform to the generally accepted accounting principles. Therefore, while the generally accepted accounting principles require treating selling and administrative expenses as period expenses, and it requires assigning all manufacturing costs to products, ABC systems can assign selling and administrative expenses to products, and they can exclude manufacturing costs from product costs where appropriate, because you're just using this just internally for decision making. All right. Numerous overhead cost pools are used, each of which is allocated to products and other cost objects using their own unique measure of activity. ABC cost pools are created to correspond to the activities performed in an organization that cause the consumption of overhead resources. Therefore, the total amount of ABC cost pools will definitely exceed one, as in the plant-wide approach. And it is likely to exceed the number of departments within a company, as in the departmental approach, since more than one activity is often performed within each department. Each ABC cost pool has its own unique measure of activity. On the contrary, traditional cost systems usually rely on direct labor hours and or machine hours to allocate all overhead costs to products. Direct labor and machine hours work correctly when changes in the quantity of the base are correlated with changes in the overhead costs being assigned using the base. Relying exclusively on these bases to assign overhead costs to products has come under increased scrutiny as on an economy-wide basis. Direct labor and overhead costs have been moving in opposite directions, and the variety of products produced by companies has increased, again, just because of how things now are not as laborious, because we're using more and more automation. And so it's important to find what is the actual activity base that is actually going to accurately reflect what it is that you're doing. And that's what we're going to look at next here. So first of all, an activity is an event that causes the consumption of overhead resources. And an activity cost pool is a bucket in which costs are accumulated that relate to a single activity measure in an ABC system. A cost measure is an allocation base in an activity-based costing system. The term cost driver is also used to refer to any activity measure. The two most common types of activity measures are transactional drivers, are simple counts of the number of times an activity occurs, such as the number of bills that are sent out to customers, or a duration driver, which measures the amount of time required to perform an activity, such as time spent preparing individual bills for customers. Now, there is the cost benefit concept by explaining that transactional drivers are more prevalent in practice than duration drivers because the data is much easier to obtain. It's a lot easier to count get a simple number. The additional accuracy provided by duration drivers oftentimes does not pass the cost benefit test, meaning that it's more complicated in order to try to figure out how long something takes. It's a lot more involved in a process, and it may not be worth it to try to quantify that. You'd have to make that judgment. Traditional cost systems rely exclusively on the allocation bases that are driven by volume of production. ABC defines 5 levels of activity that largely do not relate to the volume of units that are produced. And that's what we're going to go into now. So the unit level activities are performed each time a unit is produced. For example, providing power to run processing equipment would be a unit level activity. Batch level activities are performed each time a batch is handled or processed, regardless of how many units are in the batch. For example, setting up equipment and shipping customer orders are batch level activities. Product level activities relate to specific products and must be carried out regardless of how many batches are run or products are produced or sold. Examples would be designing or advertising a product would be a product level activity. Customer level activities relate to a specific customer and are not tied to any particular product. For example, sales calls and catalog mailings would be customer level activities. Organization sustaining activities are carried out regardless of which customers are served, which products are produced, and how many batches are run, or how many units are made. Examples are heating a factory and cleaning executive offices. Those would be organizational sustaining activities. So designing an activity-based costing system. Characteristics of a successful ABC implementation. There must be strong top management support. Without leadership from top management, some managers may not be motivated to embrace the need to change. Top managers should ensure that ABC data are linked to how people are evaluated and rewarded. If employees continue to be evaluated and rewarded using traditional or non-ABC cost data, they will quickly get the message that ABC is not important and they will abandon it. A cross-functional team should be created to design and implement the ABC system. Cross-functional employees possess intimate knowledge of operations that is necessary for the designing an effective ABC system. Tapping the knowledge of cross-functional managers lessens their resistance to ABC because they feel included in the implementation process. So the 5 steps into implementing ABC, and we're going to kind of walk this through looking at Baxter Battery Company. So the company makes 2 different types of automobile batteries, a Sure Start, which is a standard battery, and a Long Life, which is a deluxe higher quality battery. The company has reported its first loss ever of $2 million, as shown on the income statement that we see on the screen. So the first thing that we need to do is to define the activities, the activity cost pools, and the activity measures. The activities are often defined and identified by interviewing the employees that work in the respective overhead departments. The lengthy list of activities that emerges from this process is usually reduced to a handful by combining similar activities. Baxter Battery selected the 5 activity cost pools and corresponding activity measures as shown. The definition for each cost pool is as shown. So we see here the cost pools would be customer orders, design changes, order size, customer relations, and other. And then we see the activities that would go into that. So customer orders would be, we could measure the number of customer orders by the number of customer orders. Design changes by the number of design changes. Order size would have to deal with the number of machine hours that are used to produce those orders. Customer relations would be the number of active customers, would affect our cost for customer relations. So the next step is to assign costs to activity cost pools. This is also called first stage allocation. So Baxter's overhead costs, both manufacturing and non-manufacturing, that it intends to assign to its activity pools are shown here. So the total cost of the production department, $14 million, equaled the total manufacturing overhead costs on the income statement. The total cost for the general, administrative, and marketing departments, $6 million and $2 million, equal the marketing and general expenses, $8 million, which is shown on Baxter's income statement. Three costs included in Baxter's income statement, direct materials, direct labor, and shipping, are excluded from the slide because Baxter's existing cost system can directly trace these costs to products or customer orders. Baxter's cross-functional interviews resulted in resource allocations as shown. Notice, for example, the indirect factory workers allocated 30% of their time to the customer orders activity, 30% of their time to the design changes activity, 20% of their time to the order size activity, 10% of their time to customer relations, and 10% of their time to the other activity. The factory building lease costs are allocated entirely to the other activity. Since Baxter has a single facility that it does not plan to contract or expand, the lease costs are treated as organizational sustaining costs. Once the percentage allocation has been determined, it is a simple matter to assign costs to activity cost groups. For example, the indirect factory wages assigned to the customer order activity, 1.8 million, was computed by multiplying the total amount of indirect factory wages, which is 6 million, by the percentage of the time indirect factory workers spent on that activity, which is 30%. For another example, the factory equipment depreciation assigned to customer orders activity, which is 700,000, is computed by multiplying the total amount of factory equipment depreciation, 3.5 million, by the percentage of time that factory equipment was used to support this activity, which is 20%. The complete grid is of first stage allocations would be as shown. So the next step is to calculate activity rates to the cost pools. So the Baxter Battery ABC team determined activity levels for each activity as shown. This information enabled the team to compute ABC rates for each activity by dividing the total cost in each activity cost pool by the respective quantity of the activity measure. The activity rate for each cost pool is as shown. For example, the customer orders activity cost pool has an activity rate of $452 per order. Importantly, this is an average figure. Notice the other activity pool does not have an activity rate. This is because these organizational sustaining costs will not be assigned to specific products and customers. Before proceeding, let us get a visual representation of Baxter's battery ABC system. The direct materials, direct labor, and shipping costs are directly traceable to products and customer orders. The first stage allocation process assigned the remaining costs, overhead costs, to the 5 activity cost pools. Then activity measures were identified, activity levels were determined, and activity rates were computed for each activity. These rates will be used in the next step to assign overhead costs to cost objects. And then in step 4, we would assign overhead costs to cost objects. This is called the second stage allocation. And now we'll go ahead and work on that, the second stage allocation. So assigning overhead to products. The data needed to assign overhead costs to Baxter batteries to products, which are our Sure Start and Long Life, are as shown. Notice that 4,000 separate customer orders were placed for Sure Start, and 6,000 separate customer orders were placed for Long Life. All 4,000 custom product designs related to Long Life. Sure Start consumed 480,000 machine hours, and Long Life consumed 320,000 machine hours. The overhead cost assignments to Sure Start and Long Life are as shown. Notice that the total overhead costs assigned to Sure Start and Long Life are $4,928,000 and $7,832,000 respectively. The total overhead costs assigned to products, $4,928,000 and $7,832,000, plus the total overhead costs not assigned to products, which is $9,240,000, equal the total overhead cost of $22 million that we saw from earlier slides. Assigning overhead to customers. The data needed to assign overhead costs to one of Baxter customers, Acme Auto Parts, is as shown. So we see here that they have the number of orders. They have 8 orders for 60 Sure Starts per order and 4 orders for 50 of the Long Life batteries per order, and then the number of machine hours that are needed in order to produce those batteries. So the total, and we can see that broken down here. The total overhead cost assigned to Acme Auto Parts would be $12,916, is calculated here as shown. And in Learning Objective 5 is we're going to use the activity-based costing to compute product and customer margins. So we'll prepare, step 5 is to prepare management reports. So product margin calculations. The first step in computing product margins is to gather each product's sales and direct cost data, which are assigned to be as shown. The second step is to incorporate the previously computed activity-based cost assignments pertaining to each product. The third step is to compute product margin, which is $8,372,000 for Sure Start and a loss of $1,132,000 for Long Lives by deducting each product's direct and indirect costs from its sales. The product margins can be reconciled with the company's net operating income as shown. Customer margin calculation. The first step in computing Acme Auto Parts customer margin is to gather its sales and direct cost data, which are assumed to be as shown. The second step is to incorporate Acme Auto's previously computed activity-based cost assignments. The third step is to compute Acme Auto's customer margin, $384, by deducting all of its direct and indirect costs from its sales. So comparison of traditional and ABC product costs. Production margins computed using the traditional cost system. The first step is to gather each product's sales and direct cost data as shown. The second step is to compute the plant-wide overhead rate. Notice that the numerator is the $14 million of manufacturing overhead shown earlier on the company's income statement. The denominator is the 800,000 machine hours used for the order size activity from the ABC system. The plant-wide overhead rate is $17.50 per machine hour. The third step is to allocate manufacturing overhead to each product. Notice that 480,000 machine hours were worked on Sure Starts, so 8.4 million, which is 480,000 hours times 1750 for manufacturing overhead, is assigned to this product. Long Lives are assigned the remaining 5.6 million, which is 320,000 times 1750 for the manufacturing overhead. The fourth step is to compute the product margins, 6.9 million for Sure Starts and 2.1 million for Long Lives. Notice that selling and administrative expenses are not allocated to products because they are assumed to be period expenses. The overall net loss of 2 million reconciles with the income statement that we'd taken a look at the beginning. And then the differences between the ABC and the traditional method. The changes in product margin caused by switching from traditional cost system to the activity-based costing system are as shown. Notice that the traditional costing system overcosts the Sure Starts and consequently reports an artificial low product margin for this product. Conversely, the traditional costing system undercosts the Long Lives and consequently reports an artificially high product margin for this product. There are three reasons why the reported product margins for the two costing systems differ from one another. The first is that the traditional costing system allocates all manufacturing overhead to products. The ABC system only assigns manufacturing overhead costs consumed by products of those products. More specifically, the ABC system does not assign the manufacturing overhead costs assumed by the customer relations activity to products because these costs are caused by customers, not specific products. The ABC system does not assign the manufacturing overhead costs included in the other activity to products because those organizational sustaining and unused capacity costs are not caused by products. The traditional costing system allocates all manufacturing overhead costs using a volume-related allocation base, machine hours. The ABC system uses volume-related and non-volume-related allocation bases to assign manufacturing overhead to products. More specifically, the traditional cost system allocates 60% of all manufacturing overhead to sure starts and 40% to long lives. The ABC system assigns 40% and 60% of the customer orders activity cost, a batch level cost, to sure starts and long lives, respectively. The ABC system assigns 0 and 100% of product design activity cost, a product level cost, to sure starts and long lives, respectively, because the sure starts don't need any design work, but the long lives, they require all of the design work. So you're allocating it specifically to each different product line, the specifics of it. The traditional cost system disregards selling and administrative expenses because they are assumed as period expenses. The ABC system directly traces shipping costs to the products and includes non-manufacturing overhead costs caused by products in the activity cost pools that are assigned to the products. Now, a simple example can be used to illustrate the impact of ABC systems on product costs when batch level costs are involved. Suppose two products are each run in one batch a year, and the other cost of setting up a batch is $100 for each product. Other data follow. So for product A, there was 80 units. Product B, there was 20 units, and it was 1 direct labor hour per each unit. So 80 direct labor hours for product A, 20 direct labor hours for product B, 100 labor hours total. The two batches a year cost a total of $200 to set up. If direct labor hours are used to allocate the setup cost, the direct overhead rate would be $2 per direct labor hour, or $2 per unit for either product A and B. However, in an ABC system, $100 would be allocated to product A and $100 would be allocated to product B. Consequently, the batch setup cost would be $1.25 per unit for product A and $5 per unit for product B. ABC systems tend to reduce the per unit costs of high volume products and increase the per unit cost of low volume products, but the impact is more dramatic on the low volume product. Okay, targeting process improvements, key definitions and concepts. Activity-based management is used in conjunction with ABC to identify areas that would benefit from process improvement. It involves focusing on activities to eliminate waste, decrease processing time, and reduce defects. The activity rates computed in ABC can also provide valuable clues concerning where there is waste and the opportunity for improvement. Benchmarking can be used to compare an organization's activity rates with standards of performance that are external to the organization. And then the limitations of activity-based costing. There are 5 limitations of ABC. First of all is that implementing an ABC system requires substantial resources. The benefits of increased cost accuracy may not outweigh the implementation costs. An ABC system produce numbers such as product margins that are at odds with the numbers produced by traditional costing systems. Managers are not accustomed to managing their operations using these numbers. Hence, ABC inevitably faces resistance. This underscores the importance of having top management involvement with the ABC implementation. In practice, most managers insist on fully allocating all costs to products. The ABC system described in the main portion of this chapter does not conform to this preference. ABC systems do not automatically identify the relevant costs for particular decisions. Therefore, ABC data can be easily misinterpreted and must be used with care when making decisions. Costs assigned to products, customers, and other cost objects are only partially relevant. Most organizations use ABC as a supplement to, rather than as a replacement for, their existing cost system. Maintaining two cost systems is costlier than maintaining just one system, and it may cause confusion about which set of numbers is to be relied upon.